All right, let's try this again. If you haven't noticed, these are all having to be recorded through WebEx. I just forgot to share my screen in the last one, and I'm doing the video again now. But it'll probably be better. Okay, let's talk about torque. Y'all have all experienced this at some point. What if you had a doorknob or something? And to open this doorknob on the door, right, you literally have to cause a twisting action about some axis of rotation. So you literally turned the door, and every part rotated about that axis. So that's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at what actually caused that. In this case, it's a force. You had a frictional force acting at some distance d. So that's what we're going to be looking at right now. Basic definition of torque and how to calculate it. So first, it is in Newton meters. You'll often see it in foot pounds or pound feet, I think. Yeah, and I think it's in that order because work is in one and torque is in the other because they have the same unit, right? So if we apply a force at a distance, we get what's called torque, and I'll denote this with little tau subscript, or not subscript, little tau Greek symbol. All right, so let's say we have a body, and let's say we're going to rotate about this axis right here. This is our axis of rotation. So in this case, we'd be this is like us looking at the doorknob, right? Our hand would be reaching into the screen to grab this, and the rotation would be in or out of the screen. Now I'm going to apply a force like this. Now this force is a vector, right? It has magnitude and direction. And I'm going to apply it not through the mass center. Well, that doesn't have to be the mass center, but we're definitely not applying it through the mass center. We're applying it through the edge. But everything we've done up till now, all of our forces we were able to represent as just a mass, and all of our forces just acted through the mass center and caused no rotations. But if we let this force act at some distance r, this thing's going to want to rotate. We'll get into the mechanics of the rotation in the next video, but just know that's where we're headed. If we apply a force at a distance, it's going to cause a rotation about some axis. And let's look at this. What's actually happening here, and we'll come up with our first basic definition for torque. We can look at this in two ways. We can break this force right here up into components that are perpendicular. So there's a perpendicular force, and there's some component right here that would be your parallel force. Now imagine applying a parallel force to something. Imagine having you're trying to get a nut off a bolt or something, and you put your wrench around it. We typically apply the force at a perpendicular angle, and I'll show you why in a moment. But imagine just pushing on it. What if we applied the force directly in line with what it's supposed to rotate about? It doesn't do anything. So we're going to see that the most effective torque you can get would be when we look at the perpendicular component, because that's the only component that matters if we break it up. So we need the piece of this force that lies perpendicular to this radius arm right here. And that'll give us the torque in vector form, or for now, we will just reduce it to the torque is equal to that distance r times F sine v. And phi we will call the angle right here. So the angle between the projection of R and the force. Okay, we can look at this in another way too. We could actually take this force and project it backwards until we found where its perpendicular is. And that would be R sine phi times the force. Just another way you might want to figure it out. But in general, let's just say we're always going to be looking for the perpendicular radial arm times the force. And in next chapter, chapter 11, we'll get further into this rotation stuff, and we'll see that torque is actually best done if we treat it like a vector, and it is equal to R crossed into F. So we don't have to look at the perpendicular or parallel component. You just crank the handle on the cross product. You say, okay, this is right. That can make up some numbers. We could say this force looks like it goes up and over to the left. So I'm going to say maybe a negative 2I plus 3J. And we can say this is some position vector that looks like it goes maybe up or over 3 and up 3. So we can cross those two things and actually get the torque without even having to worry about if it's perpendicular or not.